It's just how long you live.
It's not just how long you live. You've won 8 Emmy Awards.
9.
She was an accomplished actress with almost 300 credits, 8 Emmys, and an Oscar. The tragic revelation about her dying moments, the secret diagnosis she concealed from admirers, and the stunning reality about why Cloris Leachman continued working until the age of 94 have all been disclosed by her family, 4 years after her death. Nothing was ever spoken or done in private, not even to her closest friends. Cloris Leachman came into this world in 1926 in Des Moines, Iowa. Even though they lived comfortably, thanks to her father's job at the family logging business, they were still unable to purchase a piano. Cloris was unfazed. She made one out of cardboard and taught herself how to play with her wits and perseverance. She stood out from the crowd from a young age, hosting her own radio program and performing in local plays. It was clear she was born to be an actress. Everyone at Roosevelt High School could not help but notice her skill. Around 1944, she left for Northwestern University, where she would study drama on a full scholarship. Paul Lynde and Charlotte Rae, 2 of her future stars, were there. However, the classroom wasn't Cloris's intended domain. She attended the Miss Chicago pageant not for self-glorification, but to earn money to pursue her true passion, acting, after deciding that the academic pressure and regimented atmosphere weren't for her. Amazingly, she triumphed. Doors were opened by the pageant. After that, she entered the Miss America pageant in 1946. As an example of her skill, she played a passage from Grieg's Piano Concerto on a genuine piano. She came in 5th place and received a 1,000er scholarship, which was a fortune for that era and allowed her to buy a plane ticket to New York City, even if she didn't win the title. While in New York, she spared no effort. With the money from the scholarship, she took piano and vocal lessons before enrolling in the Actors Studio, where she studied with the legendary Elia Kazan. At that school, she took acting classes with Marlon Brando, but her classmates said that Cloris, and not Brando, was the life of the party. Even in her Broadway debut, the brief production of Sundown Beach, which Kazan directed, she appeared. However, Cloris had already shone there despite the play's rapid conclusion. People just needed to see her once for her to leave an impression. She didn't need images or auditions to win opportunities. There was a natural progression from one act to the next. At a young age, she brought something special to the table, since she thought every humorous moment concealed a serious one, and that even the most serious roles might have some comedy in them. She got known for that. It wasn't until 1948's The Ford Theater Hour that she received her first screen credit. It was the first part of more than 270 that would make up the actor's television career. She had to figure out her niche in Hollywood before she became a household name in the United States. In 1955, that seminal work, Kiss Me Deadly, was released. Cloris portrayed a terrified lady rushing barefoot down a dark road, clad only in a trench coat, in one of the most iconic opening sequences of the decade. She hailed a passing automobile and gave a chilling performance that set the tone for the entire film. Even though her screen time was brief, it was impactful. Her words, "Remember me," lingered in the air even after the credits rolled. Funny and scathing anecdotes accumulated as she rose through the ranks of the profession. "If I had your bust, I'd rule the world," Julie Harris said to her once at the Actors Studio. The statement was somewhat a compliment and partly a critique of the significance of a woman's physical attractiveness in the entertainment industry around that time. There was more about Cloris than what met the eye. Her career was a showcase for versatility, spanning from theater to television and encompassing both tragic and comedic elements. In 1956, she co-starred with Paul Newman in the hugely dramatic military film The Rack. Caroline, the soldier's wife, was played by her. The soldier was facing a court-martial for supposedly betraying his nation after surviving a North Korean prison camp. Despite being pregnant at the time, Leachman delivered an incredibly moving performance. In a film about tragedy and courtroom tension, her parts brought a personal element. She had her first taste of collaborating with Hollywood heavyweights like Newman in this early job. And that experience would eventually come full circle over 10 years later. Cloris didn't only remain in secure areas. She had an unsettling appearance in the 1962 film The Chapman Report, which provoked controversy due to its daring treatment of female sexuality. A fictitious psychologist conducting study on the private lives of women in a posh suburb interviewed other ladies, including Leachman's character, Miss Selby. Research that many found unsettling served as inspiration for it. It was more than simply acting for Leachman. His character was a message. She demonstrated that she was unafraid of controversy when it came to stories that mattered. At about the same period, she began to gain fame on television. Her guest spots on Gunsmoke, a top-rated American television series, catapulted her to stardom. Among her memorable roles was that of Boney, a cold-blooded lady who cheated on her lover for a few $100. She also played a vulnerable prisoner lady in an earlier part. She was capable of playing every single one of these roles, and the fact that they were so unlike was the idea. Because of the massive audience she attracted, she quickly became a household name. The Twilight Zone followed. Her 1961 episode, It's a Good Life, is widely considered to be one of the most memorable of all time. In it, she played a scared mother attempting to stay alive in a town run by her God-possessed son, who was just 6 years old at the time. The act of surviving was on full display in every word and grin. Her fear was visible behind her eyes. She absolutely killed it in the terrifying part. In fact, she returned to the series decades later to star in a sequel, demonstrating that her impact was immeasurable. She reunited with Paul Newman at the decade's close, this time for the smash success Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Even though her screen time as brothel worker Agnes was minimal, less than a minute, Leachman made the most of it. She turned that fleeting moment into something people would never forget by donning a wig and singing a gentle melody. It was ad hoc, unconventional, and effective. Phyllis Lindstrom, played by Cloris Leachman, was a memorable snob who might have been easily forgotten when The Mary Tyler Moore Show premiered in 1970. But it was Leachman who truly made her memorable. Phyllis, the eccentric landlady of Mary Richards, said to have read every book ever written and had married a genius. She spoke about her dermatologist spouse, Lars, all the time, as if his title gave her greater significance, even though we never saw him. Cloris showed Phyllis huge, sweeping motions, a sharp tongue concealed under a grin, and an air of self-assuredness that caused others to roll their eyes. Yet, it was as effective. She brought out the best and worst in Phyllis. Her continual arguments with Mary's other acquaintance Rhoda were priceless. The chemistry between Cloris and Valerie Harper was so real that every insult landed just right, and the same was true for Phyllis and Rhoda. Sparks flew whenever they were in the same room. Next came the scene that forever altered the course of events for both the character and Leachman. In The Lars Affair, Betty White's Suzanne Vickerly is revealed to be Phyllis's adulterous spouse. Cloris gave it a tragic tone, making us see the hurt Phyllis was trying to hide, even though it could have been hilarious. It was at that point that the industry took notice, and people stopped making fun of her for real. She has range in addition to being hilarious. Her victory for an Emmy was a result of that performance. Cloris Leachman's role as Ruth Popper in 1971's The Last Picture Show catapulted her to stardom, but she had a long history of acting in both cinema and television. The part was exposed, alone, and brimming with subtle suffering. As a result of her husband's romance with one of his students, Ruth finds herself ignored as a wife of a high school gym instructor. Leachman really immersed herself in the role of Ruth. The scene when she sobs after being left behind in the kitchen became a highly discussed part of the film. She threw the coffee across the room after her hand trembled. Despite criticism from critics like Roger Ebert, director Peter Bogdanovich was correct in saying that she was the film's sole genuine sympathetic character. A BAFTA and an Oscar went to her. "It was incredible how you lose yourself in a role like that," she said decades later, admitting how terrible it had been. Cloris proved to the world a few years down the road that she could do something quite different, provide unparalleled comic relief. She portrayed the peculiar housekeeper, Frau Blücher, in Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein, whose character caused horses to whinny just by speaking her name. Unforgettable, strange, and funny all at the same time. Her expressionless face and abrupt outbursts, such as, "He weighs my boyfriend," became a hilarious comedic gem. Although the film was successful in and of itself, Cloris's use of her entire body in the performance, including her face, posture, and voice, to deliver the jokes, was particularly noteworthy. She has the power to move people to tears or laughter in an instant, as Mel Brooks famously put it. Collaborating was a natural fit for Cloris and Mel. They continued to collaborate after Young Frankenstein. Her role, Nurse Diesel in High Anxiety, was the antithesis of Frau Blücher, creepy and twisted. Her next role was as the French Revolution's Madame Defarge in History of the World, Part 1. She would transform into these completely different personalities in each film, to the point that you would hardly recognize her. It demonstrated her limitless potential, and Mel Brooks had a remarkable knack for bringing it out. Their collaboration was among the most successful of that decade's director-actor teams. Cloris, though, was a television celebrity in her own right, not to mention a movie star. Her breakout role as Phyllis on MTMS landed her a series of her own. As a spin-off, Phyllis premiered in 1975 and became an immediate sensation. Her snooty, caustic personality was already beloved by the public, but now she was the center of attention. After her husband died, Phyllis began a new life in San Francisco, and the show chronicled her journey. It was well received and earned Cloris a Golden Globe. Although the program seemed cursed from the outside, 3 cast members, including the horribly murdered Barbara Colby, died while it was airing. By 1977, the program had become unsustainable due to the departure of important actors. Regardless, Cloris proved in those 2 seasons that she could carry a whole series. After establishing herself in the cinema and television industries during the 1970s, she ventured into uncharted territory in 1973. Phyllis portrayed middle-aged Lady Victoria Douglas in Season 3, who was unprepared for an unexpected pregnancy. It was unusual for television to address such a sensitive and controversial topic, but Leachman brought it to life. The ratings confirmed that her performance captivated the audience. With millions of viewers and critical acclaim, she won another Emmy for elevating an otherwise lifeless concept to a level of profound realism and subtle impact. 2 years later, she made a whole U-turn. The public saw Leachman's sharp and humorous side on Laverne and Shirley's variety program when she proved she could be dramatic as well. Swift, perceptive, and unavoidable, her comedic timing was like lightning. She wasn't only a guest star, she was the showstopper, and the Emmy voters took note. That was until 1983. It was more than a performance. The lady who willed a miracle was a gut strike. May Lever, played by Cloris, was a woman who took in a severely handicapped son after everyone else had abandoned him. Cloris and May, however, did not. Audiences were horrified by the manner she portrayed the story. Every bit of that mother's anguish, optimism, and struggle was palpable. The performance was so impressive that it won almost every major award and went on to become one of the most prestigious after-school specials of all time. Leachman took up the role of Beverly Ann Stickle in 1986, following Charlotte Rae's departure from The Facts of Life. Taking the chance was worth it, since fans adored Mrs. Garrett, but Leachman lent the part her unique charisma and warmth. She maintained the show's emotional core while injecting it with a touch of sassiness. She even had sequences with George Clooney, who was a relative unknown back then. She was instrumental in getting the program through its last episodes and even traveled to Australia with the actors for a special film. The laughter was ensured to continue by Cloris. Some felt her best was yet to come, but she quickly disproved their claims. Her 1998 Emmy for Promised Land was her sixth. Decades after her first major successes, she remained charming, genuine, and endearing as Aunt Emma Lynn in that series. Still, her performances were jaw-dropping. Her wits were strengthened by age rather than dulled. She proved to the business that she was here to stay with her smash hit Promised Land, and that she had plenty of tales to tell and people to bring to life. A few years down the road, in her role as Grandma Ida on Malcolm in the Middle, she set new marks once again. Whether it was on stage, in real life, or in a romantic relationship, Cloris Leachman was never a rule follower. In 1953, she made a hasty choice right before she had to appear on television in a live drama. Asking her co-star, "Should I marry him?" she turned to him. This individual was none other than George England, a member of a famous family of Hollywood editors. Immediately, Cloris tied the knot with him. Her life for the next 20 years would be defined by that hasty choice. There were many ups and downs throughout their marriage. It was everything but predictable or serene. At home, George was one side of a tumultuous, peculiar relationship. However, he became great friends with Marlon Brando and later directed him in a big picture. According to Cloris, their connection was like a fight between a cobra and a mongoose. George went so far as to say, "You've finally worn me down. I can't think of anything but you." This powerful attraction both bound them and tore them apart again. Their 21-year marriage ended in divorce, and they joked about splitting up frequently. If there was enough money, Cloris even suggested their children reside in a third one. Despite all that was going on, Cloris never wavered in her devotion to her family. Despite their frequent breakups, she said that her children were everything to her. They had 4 sons, George, Adam, Morgan, and Brian, by 1966. The arrival of their first daughter brought about an unusual stalemate. The little girl went unnamed for 4 lengthy months. George had in mind the name Cheyenne, which meant brave and Native American, but Cloris found the idea absurd, particularly given the England surname. She advocated for a straightforward option, such as Marion. Neither of them would budge. They continued to refer to her as Miss England until they finally settled on a new name, Dinah, after her mother, after they had both rejected their original options. The unconventional Dinah appeared in a few films alongside Cloris until, at the age of 16, she bolted to Paris with her mother's approval to complete her education and, subsequently, launch her own company. Fun was not the inevitable conclusion to every one of Cloris's family tales. Brian, her eldest son, had checked in discreetly 3 days before, and his death in a Manhattan YMCA room in 1986 was the greatest loss a parent can endure. A maid contacted for assistance after he failed to respond to the doorbell. Within, they discovered 2 vials of ulcer medicine on his bedside, along with Brian's lifeless body. Despite Cloris's best efforts, he continued to struggle with heroin addiction, something she had been fighting for years. Subsequent toxicology findings validated her worst fears: an overdose. Her heart sank at the news. She spoke frankly about the anguish of loving a hopeless soul in an interview later that year. "I tried every possible thing to free him from his chains," she declared, her voice brimming with love and sorrow. This was an unusually vulnerable moment for the normally fearless and humorous woman. She generally knew how much her loved ones loved her, and her loved ones knew her loved him. A void in her heart was never fully filled when Brian passed away. Rather of fading away gracefully with age, Cloris Leachman's star power only increased as she aged older, making her even more daring and unexpected. She went through a radical transformation in the early 2000s, becoming an unapologetic television icon. She was Grandma Ida on Malcolm in the Middle, and she was a terrifying, overbearing, and hilariously amusing grandma. She won 2 Emmys and stole the show in just 11 episodes. Cloris gave her character an unusually memorable performance, despite the fact that she had a prosthetic limb, despised everyone, and never held back an insult. The combination of cringing and laughing was too much to bear. Cloris chose to step it up a notch a few years later when she danced live on television. She took part in Dancing with the Stars at the age of 82. Despite everyone's expectations that she would be the first to depart, Cloris had other intentions. As she and her partner, Corky Ballas, danced their hearts out, she joked, flirted, hoisted her leg onto the table, and more. She didn't do well on the test, but her 6 weeks on the show proved that physical fitness is more important than age when it comes to captivating an audience. She published her autobiography, Cloris, my autobiography, smack dab in the center of it all. Not your average Hollywood memoir, this one was hilarious, really honest, and packed with surprises. Everything from her marriage to extramarital activities to her strange bond with Marlon Brando was laid bare. There was no restriction. She was just as bold and charismatic in her writing as she was in her speech. In a short amount of time, the book became a smashing success. In the 2004 film Spanglish, she played a somewhat more substantial part. Cloris delivered a subtle yet striking portrayal as Téa Leoni's disturbed mother. Her character, a jazz vocalist in recovery from alcoholism, had both profound remorse and astute insights. She shows her acting chops in a sequence where she attacks her daughter with loving candor but also brutality. Her portrayal in the part served as a reminder that she was more than simply hilarious. She was also very genuine. She posed in an outfit crafted completely from cabbage leaves, just when you thought she had accomplished everything. Yes, it was for a PETA campaign and got a lot of attention, but it wasn't funny. Before being a vegetarian was cool, Cloris was one since the 1960s. She spoke out about it because she believed in it, and because of her celebrity. She remained vivacious and energetic throughout the day of filming, dancing, singing, and laughing her way through it all. Cloris was being like Cloris in her cabbage dress. It was both a daring and humorous expression of her serious side. When they reach the age of 84, most performers start to slow down, but Cloris Leachman was anything but. In the sitcom Raising Hope, she played the character of Ma Ma, a rambunctious grandma suffering from dementia, and she nailed it every time. The part that began as a supporting one soon became the lead. Both the authors and the audience were captivated by her. She was cast in some of the most ridiculous moments from the program because producers knew she would give it her all, regardless of how strange or outlandish they were. And she absolutely killed it. Her charisma, timing, and bravery were unmatched by most actresses half her age, and that was when she was quite young. In addition to making audiences laugh, Cloris Leachman's performance served as a reminder that her acting career was far from over. She became a member of the Croods voice cast in 2013, portraying Gran, an obstinate and vicious elderly cave woman with a wicked tongue and impeccable comic timing. Gran was energized by Leachman's voice, even though the rest of the ensemble featured Nicolas Cage and Emma Stone. 7 years later, she made a triumphant return for the sequel, delivering her final lines moments before she died away. She was introduced to a whole new generation of children when that film debuted in theaters during the epidemic, attracting millions of viewers. Even though they didn't recognize her face, they were familiar with her voice. Then American Gods came along. She took on the role of Zoria Veternaya, a goddess of the Slavic sky who is both powerful and aging, and the role was neither lighthearted nor simple. She embodied the character's strength and grief. At over 90 years old, Cloris wasn't just keeping up. She was anchoring the entire series in a program full of gods and odd powers. She gave life to the fantastic, even while the world around her was completely out of this world. She seemed familiar, even in a fantastical wasteland. She played a dying grandma who forms a relationship with her drag queen grandson in Jump Darling, her last leading role. It conveyed genuine feeling and was unfiltered. Her performance in The Last Picture Show, for which she won an Oscar, was likened to this. In her sorrow, love, and obstinate pride, I recognized a familiar quality. She wasn't just pretending to be dying, she was living it to the fullest. Her final film endeavor, Not to Forget, also featured some great actors. Both films came out after her death and served as mementos of her life and the impact she had on the world. Cloris Leachman passed away on January 27, 2021, when she was 94 years old. She was accompanied by her daughter. She died of a stroke, with COVID-19 contributing to her condition but not being the primary cause. In the town of Encinitas, where she had passed away, her daughter kept her ashes. A deluge of tributes arrived as soon as the news hit. Mel Brooks remarked that her iconic performance as Frau Blucher made him think of her whenever he heard a horse whinny. After praising her as a sweet mama, Ed Asner promised to carry her legacy with him to the hereafter. She was more than an actress. She was a powerful figure. Cloris Leachman established that you don't quit when you're old. You stop when you're done with your career, earning 8 Emmys, an Oscar, a Golden Globe, and approximately 300 cinematic credits. Your work continues to exist even after that.